The obsidian spires of the Grand Tribunal rose like broken teeth against the violet sky of Nexus Station. For 3,000 cycles, this was where civilizations came to die. The Sovereign Assembly had ruled the spiral arm with absolute authority, their word law across 10,000 systems. Today, they gathered to pass sentence on humanity, a species that had dared to exist without permission. Ambassador Thomas Reeves stood in the accused circle, a simple figure in a Navy dress uniform, surrounded by beings that towered over him like living monuments. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, his weathered face composed in an expression of quiet patience. But behind those gray eyes, something burned that the Assembly had not encountered in centuries. Absolute defiance, wrapped in diplomatic courtesy. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a sphere 300 meters across, with gravity platforms arranged in concentric rings. Each platform held a representative of the Assembly's member species. The Vryn occupied the highest tier, their crystalline forms refracting light into prismatic shadows. Below them coiled the Sethruk, serpentine giants whose scales clinked like chainmail with every movement. The Harathi delegation, massive beings of living stone, created small tremors just by shifting their weight. High Chancellor Draxus of the Vryn Collective raised 6 of his 12 limbs, demanding silence. His voice resonated through the chamber like wind through crystal caves. Ambassador Reeves of Terra, your species stands accused of 17 violations of Assembly law. How do you answer these charges? Thomas smiled, a thin expression that revealed nothing. I answer that humanity does not recognize the authority of this Assembly to bring charges against us. We were never consulted about these laws. We never agreed to abide by them. And we certainly never gave you jurisdiction over our systems. A wave of shock rippled through the chamber. The Sethruk ambassador, Vesith the Unyielding, uncoiled to her full height of 6 meters. Her tongue flickered out, tasting the air. You dare? Every species in this spiral arm bows to Assembly authority. Your defiance is meaningless. You have 47 colony worlds. We control 14,000. Your fleet numbers 800 vessels. Ours exceeds 200,000. Submit now or be eradicated? Thomas clasped his hands behind his back, the gesture of a man perfectly at ease. Those are impressive numbers, Ambassador Vesith. Tell me, how many of those 200,000 ships have seen actual combat in the last 500 years? The question hung in the air like a blade. Vesith's eyes narrowed to slits. We do not need combat experience to crush vermin. Our technological superiority is absolute. Our weapons can turn your worlds to ash. Our shields can withstand any attack you might mount. Interesting. Thomas walked slowly around the accused circle, as if giving a lecture to students. You assume we would attack. You assume we would fight according to your understanding of warfare. These assumptions concern me, Ambassador. They suggest you have not actually studied humanity very carefully. High Chancellor Draxus leaned forward, his crystalline face reflecting the chamber lights in dizzying patterns. Explain yourself, human. What makes you believe your primitive species could resist the combined might of the Sovereign Assembly? Thomas stopped walking. For the first time, his smile reached his eyes, and it was not a pleasant expression. Primitive, perhaps? But primitives have certain advantages. We still remember how to fight. We still understand that survival is not guaranteed. While your species have grown comfortable in your dominance, we have been fighting for every scrap of territory, every resource, every breath of air for our entire history. He scanned the faces of the Assembly, a teacher before a class of arrogant students. We have fought amongst ourselves, with a savagery that would horrify you. We have fought diseases that decimated our populations. We have fought extinction events that reshaped our planet. Every generation of humanity has known struggle. Every generation has had to fight for its future. Your peace is a luxury we have never known. Our entire existence is one long, unbroken war. A smaller delegate spoke up from one of the lower platforms. This was Hyrax of the Kelphin Concordat, a being resembling a floating jellyfish with bioluminescent organs pulsing beneath translucent skin. His voice was gentle, almost sad. Ambassador Reeves, please understand our position. We do not wish to destroy humanity. We simply require compliance. Pay the tribute. Share your technology. Accept your place in the natural order. Why sacrifice everything for pride? Thomas turned to face Hyrax directly, his expression softening slightly. It is not about pride, Ambassador. It is about principle. You call it tribute. We call it extortion. You call it natural order. We call it tyranny. And humanity learned long ago that some things are worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. We have a history filled with stories of small groups standing against vast empires, not because they thought they could win, but because it was the right thing to do. That is a concept I doubt you can truly grasp. Freedom isn't a commodity to be traded. It's a right to be defended to the last breath if necessary. The Harathi representative, a creature named Gronther, whose voice rumbled like an avalanche, spoke for the first time. Brave words from a species that will soon be extinct. We have crushed civilizations far older and more advanced than yours. What makes you believe you will fare any differently? For a moment, Thomas said nothing. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Because you have forgotten something important, Ambassador Gronther. Something that your thousands of years of unopposed dominance have allowed you to forget. In war, numbers matter. Technology matters. But do you know what matters most? He paused, letting the question resonate. Will matters. The willingness to do whatever it takes. The refusal to surrender no matter the cost. You see yourselves as our superiors. We see ourselves as survivors. And there is a vast difference between fighting to maintain an empire and fighting for your right to exist. You fight for profit, for power, for prestige. We will be fighting for our homes, for our children, for the simple, undeniable right to be. And a parent defending their child is the most dangerous force in the universe. Now multiply that by every man, woman, and child of the human race. The silence in the chamber was profound. The towering figures of the assembly, for the first time, seemed less like gods and more like relics. Draxus rose to his full height, his entire crystalline body glowing with anger. The illusion of calm was shattered. Enough philosophy. You have refused tribute. You have denied us your technology. You have rejected every term we have offered. Therefore, by the authority vested in this assembly, I declare humanity to be in violation of sovereign law. Your species is hereby sentenced to complete subjugation. Your colonies will be occupied. Your resources will be seized. Your people will serve. Resistance will result in extinction. Thomas nodded slowly, as if he had expected nothing less. I will relay your decision to my government, High Chancellor. But I feel obligated to warn you. Humanity does not subjugate well. We have a saying on Earth. You can knock us down, but we will get back up. You can hit us, but we will hit back harder. You can try to break us, but we will bend instead, and when we snap back, empires fall. Veseth laughed, a hissing sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. Empty threats from a doomed species. Our fleets will arrive at your worlds within 10 cycles. We will demonstrate the price of defiance. I look forward to it, Thomas replied quietly. But I should mention something before you dismiss me. You asked why I was not afraid. The answer is simple. This entire time, you have been surrounded. The chamber erupted in confusion. Delegates turned to each other, mandibles clicking, tendrils waving, voices raised in multiple languages. Draxus demanded silence with a thunderous command. What deception is this? Our sensors show nothing. Nexus Station's defenses would detect any approach. Thomas reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device. Your sensors are calibrated to detect ships using conventional drives, vessels that emit radiation signatures, objects that displace mass in predictable ways. But you have never encountered human stealth technology. We don't just hide from sensors. We hide from reality itself. He pressed the device. Throughout the chamber, reality seemed to shimmer and fold. Outside the transparent dome of the tribunal, the starfield dissolved. Where there was once empty void, there was now a fleet. Not a fleet of 800 ships, but tens of thousands. Sleek, black vessels of every size, hanging silently in the space around Nexus Station. They had no running lights, emitted no heat, and bent space-time around them, rendering them utterly invisible until this very moment. The delegates stared in horror. Their mighty station, the heart of their empire, was bracketed, outmaneuvered, and utterly defenseless. Thomas's voice cut through the stunned silence, now carrying the weight of a fleet at his back. You judged us on the information you had, and you found us wanting. The problem is, your information was incomplete. You saw what we wanted you to see. For 50 years, we have been watching you, learning your weaknesses, and preparing. You see, when you're a survivor, you learn not to show your full strength until the moment it counts the most. He looked directly at Draxus, his gray eyes now as hard as steel. We are not here to ask for our freedom. We are here to take it. The sentence you have passed on humanity is rejected. And now, this assembly will listen to our terms. Consider this your first and only lesson in what it means to fight a human. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one. The shimmer in space grew stronger, and then the impossible happened. Right before the eyes of the Grand Tribunal, right through the massive viewports, shapes started to appear out of thin air. At first, there was just one, then another, and then dozens more. They looked like ghosts taking on solid-formed huge warships that had been lurking there the whole time, completely invisible to every single sensor the assembly had. These ships were different. They weren't elegant and graceful like the Vryn crystal ships, and they weren't brutish and heavy like the Hrethi dreadnoughts. They were angular, efficient, and covered in some kind of dark plating that seemed to just swallow light instead of reflecting it. Every ship was bristling with weapons that were impossible to identify at a glance, and they had formed a perfect sphere around Nexus Station, a silent, menacing cage. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates were scrambling for their comms, shouting orders to their fleets, demanding to know what was going on. Alarms started blaring throughout the entire station, a horrible symphony of warnings that were all coming way too late. But Thomas, standing there in the accused circle, didn't move a muscle. His expression was calm, unchanged. His voice cut through the noise, clear and steady. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of indeterminate gender, allow me to introduce the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet of the Terran Coalition Navy. He let that sink in for a moment. They've been in position around the station for the last 72 hours. During that time, they've cataloged every one of your defensive systems, mapped every vulnerability, and targeted every critical point on Nexus Station. They've also been tracking the movements of every single assembly warship within 3 light years of us. High Chancellor, Draxus stumbled backward, his usual crystalline composure completely shattered. This is an act of war. You bring weapons into neutral space. You're threatening the assembly itself. Thomas just tilted his head slightly. Am I? I seem to remember your ambassador Vesith threatening to turn our worlds to ash just a few minutes ago. I think the phrase she used was complete subjugation. So please, let's not get into a debate about who is threatening who. On the command platform, a Vryn security officer was frantically tapping at his console. High Chancellor, I'm detecting over 200 human vessels. Their weapons are hot, and their shield systems are active. They have target locks on all major station systems. They could cripple us in seconds. Ambassador Vesith had coiled herself up. Her hood flared in pure aggression. You wouldn't dare attack this station. Every fleet in the assembly would hunt you across the entire galaxy. You'd doom your whole species for this little moment of defiance. Thomas walked right up to the edge of the accused circle, his hands still clasped calmly behind his back. You still don't understand us, do you, Ambassador? Let me tell you a story. About 300 years ago, back on Earth, there was a nation that believed it was invincible. It had the most powerful military, the most advanced technology, all the resources. It decided to conquer a much smaller nation, and it expected a quick, easy surrender. Instead, he continued, that smaller nation fought back for years. They used tactics the larger nation just couldn't counter. They managed to turn their own weakness into a strength. They made every single victory so costly that eventually the larger nation just gave up and withdrew, even though it never lost a single major battle. Do you know what that smaller nation understood that the larger one didn't? The chamber had fallen silent. Every single being in that room was hanging on his every word, their attention locked on the human who was somehow in complete control, despite being the one on trial. They understood, Thomas said, that you don't need to win every battle to win a war. You just need to make the cost of occupying them higher than the value of conquering them. You need to make your enemy wonder if victory is even worth the price they'll have to pay. A new voice chimed in from one of the middle platforms. It was Coordinator Plex of the Synthate Union, a being made of pure energy held inside a geometric force field. His voice was calm, analytical. You're proposing asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics on a galactic scale. But even so, the math doesn't work in your favor. We outnumber you. We can replace our losses much faster than you can inflict them. Thomas actually nodded, as if he appreciated the point. Finally, someone who thinks strategically instead of emotionally. You're absolutely right, Coordinator Plex. In a war of attrition, we would eventually lose. Which is precisely why we have no intention of fighting a war of attrition. He gestured toward the ships visible through the viewport. What you see out there is not our entire fleet. It's not even a significant portion of it. These vessels are just a demonstration, a proof of concept. We wanted you to understand what we're capable when you can't see us coming. Hyrax, the floating gas being, drifted closer, his internal lights pulsing with agitation. What are you saying? That you have more ships hidden all over assembly space? I'm saying, Thomas replied, that for the last 6 months, human vessels have been moving freely throughout your territory. We've been studying your infrastructure, your trade routes, your military deployments. We've been learning how your society works, where the weak points are, and what targets would cause the most disruption with the least amount of effort. The weight of that statement crashed over the assembly like a tidal wave. Draxus gripped the railing of his platform so hard that his crystalline fingers started to create stress fractures in the metal. You've been spying on us? Violating our sovereign space? Thomas gave a thin, cold smile. With all due respect, High Chancellor, you just sentenced my entire species to slavery. You don't really have the moral high ground to lecture us about violations. And before you make another threat, please understand something crucial. We did not come here to negotiate. We came here to deliver a message. He pulled out another device. A holographic display popped up in the center of the chamber, showing a tactical map of the Nexus system. Red markers appeared at dozens of locations, each one indicating a hidden human vessel. These are monitoring stations, Thomas explained. They're watching everything that happens here. If anything happens to me, if this station tries to detain or harm any human representative, every major communications relay in this entire sector will be destroyed simultaneously. Your ability to coordinate your military will be crippled for months. On top of that, we have positioned specialized weapons near 300 critical infrastructure points all throughout assembly space. Manufacturing centers, shipyards, resource processing facilities. Grongther, the hulking delegate, shook with rage. You're threatening to attack civilian targets? This is terrorism. No, Thomas said, his voice like ice. This is deterrence. We are not threatening to attack your civilians. We are demonstrating that we have the capability to strike anywhere, anytime, and you will never see us coming. We are showing you that the cost of trying to subjugate humanity would be the complete destabilization of your entire civilization. Vesith uncoiled, her eyes burning with pure hatred. You're bluffing. You wouldn't sacrifice yourselves in a hopeless war. Thomas met her gaze without even a flicker of doubt. You've studied our history, Ambassador. Then you know the humans have repeatedly chosen death over subjugation. We've fought wars that killed millions of our own people rather than surrender. We've destroyed our own cities just to deny them to invaders. We have a capacity for self-sacrifice that you, who have never faced real hardship, simply cannot comprehend. He turned slowly, looking around at the entire assembly. But here's what should truly terrify you. We don't want to fight. We don't want to destabilize your civilization. We just want to be left alone. Give us that, and we will withdraw our fleets. We'll share technology on our terms, trade as equals, and maybe even become allies one day. But if you insist on subjugation, if you force us into a corner, we will fight. And we will make absolutely certain that even if we lose, the victory will cost you everything you value. The chamber was dead silent. The powerful representatives of the Sovereign Assembly, beings who had ruled unchallenged for thousands of years, were now facing an impossible choice. They couldn't guarantee a victory without catastrophic losses. They couldn't even trust their own sensors anymore. Coordinator Plex spoke again, his energy form flickering with something that looked almost like respect. You have placed us in checkmate, Ambassador Reeves. We cannot attack without triggering mutual destruction. We cannot ignore you without looking weak to other species who might want to follow your example. What, exactly, are you proposing? Thomas straightened his uniform, a simple gesture that carried the weight of final authority. Recognize humanity as a sovereign power. Withdraw all claims to our territory and our resources. Establish diplomatic relations as equals, not as masters and servants. Do this, and we will share what we can, trade what we will, and ensure that your assembly continues to function as it has for thousands of years. He paused, letting the offer hang in the air, letting it settle over the stunned delegates. But understand this very clearly. The age of absolute assembly dominance has ended today. Not because we destroyed it, but because we proved it was vulnerable. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more. See you next time. The Grand Tribunal was silent, a silence stretched to its breaking point. Thomas watched the faces of beings who had never known uncertainty, now wrestling with a new reality. He could see them calculating, desperately searching for alternatives that simply did not exist. High Chancellor Draxus was motionless, his crystalline body no longer glowing, now dull and opaque. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its authority. It was the voice of someone who had just watched their world shatter. How did we not see this coming? He asked, more to himself than anyone else. We have intelligence networks spanning thousands of systems. We have technology refined over millennia. How did a species barely 3 centuries into space travel outmaneuver us so completely? Something unexpected rose in Thomas's chest. Not triumph, but understanding. He hadn't come here to humiliate them. He came to save his species. Yes, but also to wake the assembly from a dangerous dream before that dream consumed everyone. You did not see it because you stopped looking, Thomas said gently. When you've been the strongest for so long, you forget that strength can take different forms. You built your power on technology and numbers. We built ours on adaptability and determination. You assumed every species would follow the same path you did. We chose a different road. Hyrax, a being of pure light, drifted closer, his luminescence pulsing with deep thought. I have studied your history files, Ambassador Reeves. Your species has spent most of its existence fighting itself. Countless wars, endless conflicts. When you finally reached the stars, we assumed you would bring that chaos with you. Instead, you united. How? Thomas looked up at the floating being, seeing genuine curiosity, not condemnation. We united because we finally understood something important. Our differences, the things we fought over for thousands of years, they became meaningless when we faced the infinite universe. We realized that out here, among the stars, we were not separate nations or cultures. We were humanity. And humanity had to stand together or fall apart. He walked to the viewport, gazing at the human warships floating in formation. Those ships out there? They are crewed by people from every continent on Earth, from every colony we have established. People whose ancestors once fought bitter wars against each other now serve side by side because they understand that survival requires unity. That is what you taught us, High Chancellor. When we learned that the galaxy was full of species that had already claimed everything, we knew we had only one choice. Stand together or be swept away. Vesith's reptilian scales rippled, but her voice had lost its edge. You speak of unity, yet you threaten us with destruction. How is that different from what you accuse us of doing? Because we do not want to destroy you, Thomas replied, turning back to face her. We want you to understand us. Every threat I have made today is conditional. Remove the threat to humanity, and every single one of our weapons becomes irrelevant. We did not come here seeking conquest or revenge. We came seeking recognition. The right to exist on our own terms. Gronther, a massive stone being, shifted, creating small cracks in his platform. And if we grant this recognition, what guarantee do we have that humanity will not use this advantage to expand aggressively? That you will not become the very threat you claim we are? It was a fair question. Thomas pulled out a data cylinder and placed it on the platform before him. This contains a proposal from the Terran Coalition Council. It outlines limitations we are willing to accept on our expansion, transparency measures for our military activities, and frameworks for cooperative research and trade. We are not asking for unlimited freedom. We are asking for the same rights you grant to any sovereign species. He paused. But more than that, we are offering something the Assembly has not had in a very long time. Competition. Not the hostile kind that ends in war, but the healthy kind that drives innovation. We will challenge you to be better, to think differently, to remember that power comes with responsibility. And in return, we will learn from you. Coordinator Plex's energy form brightened. You speak of partnership, yet you hold weapons to our heads. Explain this contradiction. Thomas smiled, a real warmth in it this time. Because that is how trust begins between strangers. We show you our teeth so you know we can bite. You show us yours for the same reason. Then we both choose to close our mouths and talk instead. Trust is not built by pretending we are harmless. It is built by proving we can be dangerous, but choosing not to be. The chamber fell quiet again, but it was a different silence. Shock had faded, replaced by contemplation. Thomas could feel the shift as they stopped reacting and started thinking. Hyrax spoke softly, his voice full of a sudden sadness. We have become what we once fought against. When the Assembly was young, we banded together to resist the tyranny of the Eternal Dominion. We promised ourselves we would create something better, something fair. But over time, as we grew powerful, we forgot those promises. We became the very thing we had overthrown. It happens, Thomas said. Power corrupts not because it changes people, but because it insulates them from consequences. You stopped hearing the word no, because no one dared say it. Until today. Draxus straightened slowly, his crystalline body beginning to glow again with a soft, steady light. You have given us much to consider, Ambassador Reeves. And you have reminded us of truths we had forgotten. The assembly will need time to deliberate your proposal. Of course, Thomas nodded. But while you deliberate, know this. Every species in this galaxy has been watching. Word will spread that humanity defied the assembly and survived. Others, ones you have subjugated, will begin to question your dominance. You can try to suppress this, but suppression only works when people believe you are invincible. Today, we proved you are not. Vesith hissed softly, but there was no anger now. You have started something that cannot be stopped. The order we have maintained for 3,000 cycles will crumble. No, Thomas countered. The order built on fear will crumble. But you have a chance to build something better. An order built on respect, on mutual benefit, on the understanding that different does not mean inferior. That is the choice before you. Cling to the old ways and watch your empire fragment, or embrace change and create something that can last another 3,000 cycles. He held out the data cylinder. We are not your enemies unless you make us so. We can be partners, allies, even friends. But we will never be your subjects. Accept that, and we can build something remarkable together. For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Chancellor Draxus descended from his platform and approached Thomas. The human ambassador stood his ground, meeting the towering alien's gaze without fear. Draxus reached out a long, faceted limb and took the data cylinder. I cannot speak for the entire assembly, Ambassador Reeves, but I can speak for myself. You have my attention, and more importantly, you have my respect. That is something I have not given to a new species in 500 cycles. Thomas bowed slightly, a gesture between equals. That is all we ask, High Chancellor. A chance to prove ourselves worthy of that respect. As Thomas turned to leave the accused circle, now a free representative, he felt the weight of history shifting. The human warships outside remained silent guardians of a new future. He knew they would eventually depart, their purpose fulfilled not through destruction, but through the courage to stand firm. Behind him, the delegates of the Sovereign Assembly began to talk, their voices carrying notes of uncertainty, but also of possibility. The galaxy had changed today, not through war, but through will. And somewhere on distant Earth, billions of humans would soon learn that they had earned their place among the stars, not by begging for it, but by refusing to accept anything less. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.